Hi folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the Movies, and I'm back with you for another ranking video, a short and sweet one this time. Hot off the release of last week's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the fifth and the final entry into at least the Harrison Ford-led series, I thought that I might do a little video to just let you know how I would rank the series. And I've talked about these films a lot on my channel already, and you will have likely seen or be seeing, depending on when it comes out, the vlog that me and Phil did recently, marathoning them all. So they're all really fresh in my mind when I make this ranking. And if you know me, you might have a bit of an idea how this is going to go anyway. But I thought that I'd take the opportunity to make this little video and let you know how I'd rank them. Of course, I'm wearing the home colours as well with my Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade t-shirt here. Don't worry, there's not something down it. I've just had a glass of water and I'm a clumsy bugger. But there we are. I just thought I'd drop that in there for you. But let's jump into the list, shall we? Now, I don't always do this, but I am going to start with an honourable mention in 6th place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an honourable mention to the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and in particular, the TV movie episode, whatever you want to call it, Mystery of the Blues. The reason I'm doing that is because it's bookended, instead of by the usual George Hall bookends of playing a 100-year-old Indy talking about his various adventures. It's bookended by Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones in around 1950, and he tells the story of how he worked in a restaurant in the 20s in Chicago, waiting tables, where he learned to play the saxophone, and ultimately had a run-in with Al Capone. It's an interesting little tidbit, is that particular episode, as is the whole series really. It's, you know, it just sort of fills in a few blanks and does whatever. And that particular episode, like I say, he spends the first probably 2/3 of it learning to play the saxophone and befriending Jeffrey Wright's character Sidney, who sort of leads the band in the restaurant where he's working. And then the last third of it, all of a sudden there's a murder and it leads back to Al Capone. So it doesn't really follow the format of Indy that we know and love, but it's a quirky little adventure, and it is the only time that Harrison Ford appeared as Indiana Jones officially in the 1990s. So it's, like I say, a nice little tidbit, and that's why it gets my honourable mention. So in at number 5, here's where maybe I lose some people. And I want you to remember, folks, this is a subjective list and not an objective one. It'd be a completely different order of ranking if it was objective. But for me, subjectively, my least favourite film in the franchise is Temple of Doom. And I don't know what it is particularly about this film that just doesn't gel with me. But it just doesn't gel with me as well as some of the others. I was actually having this debate when I went to see Dial of Destiny with my friends that came to see it. And we were talking about sort of, well, you know, it's a prequel, and so Indy's not learnt the lessons that he's learnt from the likes of Raiders and Crusade and whatever else yet. So, of course, the character's going to be different, and he's going to be a bit more bitter and a bit more callous about, you know, sort of the whole fortune and glory bit, whereas obviously in Raiders and certainly in Crusade he's a bit more reserved. So yeah, I didn't particularly like the way that the character was developed in that particular entry into the franchise. I wasn't mad for the setting and the upped sort of horror and sort of, I don't know if you'd call it gore, but you know, that sort of upped sort of horror factor, and the fact that it was a bit more full on with the, you know, with the violence and stuff like that. It didn't work for me, and I really think that the character of Willie Scott, played, you know, wonderfully by Kate Capshaw. She does a great job of playing somebody that's completely, you know, irritating and just fish out of water sort of thing, but it really didn't work. The positives in this one for me are the opening sequence in the Shanghai nightclub, and the chemistry between Indy and Short Round is iconic, and I wish we'd have had more of Short Round in the series as it went on, but obviously sadly not to be. But yeah, in at 5th place is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So coming in at number 4, we have Indiana Jones's return after a 19-year absence. In 2008, they brought out Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and this sees Indiana Jones going up against the Russians in the search for the City of Gold along the Amazon River, and there's crystal skulls involved, and it sort of links back into the whole sort of Roswell 47 crash. I've never understood the hate for this one, and it really does have sort of almost a loathing on the internet when people talk about this film. There's rarely anybody I see that wants to defend it and go, do you know what, this is this is an all right film, and I think because the first three are held in such high regard, and rightly so, to be fair. Even though one of those first three has come out the bottom of my list, but I still think it's a fair commentary. Even though those three are held in such high regard, I think that the newer entries have sort of been, or at least Crystal Skull has been, held to that same regard, and I think it was never going to live up to that. And I think even when I was 16, when it came out, going into that, watching it with my dad and my sister, I remember it clearly. I remember thinking, well, this isn't going to be as good as the other ones that were made back in the day and are just, classics. But hopefully it can be good in its own way. And for me, it was. I didn't think that Shia LaBeouf was miscast or the wrong sort of choice for the film. I think he and Harrison Ford played off each other really well. The return of Marion Ravenwood, played by Karen Allen, was great. I didn't mind the bad guys with the Russians, led by what's his name now, Ray Winston, and then obviously fully headed up by Cate Blanchett's Spalko. I really didn't mind them at all. Does the third act struggle for a little bit of pacing issues? Yes, it does, absolutely. And the CG's a little bit too Star Wars prequel-y for my liking at the end. But overall, I think the pros outweigh the cons in it, and that's why I would put it in at number 4 on my list. So in at number 3, and this might change over time, but I had to go with my gut feeling on this, and I've only seen it, at least as of recording this video, the once. But this film took me on a roller coaster of emotions, and it is 2023's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The first film in the series not to be directed by Steven Spielberg. This one's directed by James Mangold, and it sees Harrison Ford at the age of 80 returning to the role of Indiana Jones. Now, I'm conscious that this film's just come out, and that obviously spoilers are going to be something that's heavily avoided, so I'm not really going to talk spoilers in this section of it. But in terms of the plot, Indy's goddaughter turns up and lures him on another adventure for the titular Dial of Destiny, and they go up against Mads Mikkelsen's Voller, who's the bad guy in this, and he's superb. The film, for me, had the right mix of action, of comedy, of heart and emotion, and there was a surprising amount of that in there. I thought that the characters gelled really well together, and to say it's the longest film of the franchise, it didn't feel like it. It flew by, and I didn't feel like there were any pacing issues. My biggest criticism with it is some of the CGI and the deep faking technology, and I don't feel I'm spoiling anything by saying that the first 20 minutes of the film are set back in the same sort of timeline as the old Indy adventures, and they de-age Harrison Ford. There's a couple of scenes where it looks uncanny, and it's fantastic. The scene that's in all the trailers where they pull the hood off him and he's being interrogated, that works brilliantly. But then as he starts becoming more agile and starts getting involved in fights, and there's the sequence again in the trailers on top of the train, it sort of loses a little bit of something, and it doesn't feel quite as polished. And there's also a scene later in the film through the moon landing parade where a stunt double's clearly been used, and some of the deep faking doesn't quite land for just a couple of frames there. But really, folks, on my initial viewing, that was my biggest gripe with it. And I'm sure when I do a spoiler review a bit down the line, which I am going to do, I'll be able to talk about it in more detail. And as I sort of reflect on it more, I'll maybe think that there's more things. But at the moment, it's firmly in at third place for me. I thoroughly had a great time with it, and go check it out in the cinemas. So, in at number 2, we have the original, the film that started it all, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I adore this film. It is, along with the rest of them really, at least in that original trilogy, the quintessential action film. It really broke the mould and then set the new mould for what action-adventure films needed to be. Harrison Ford is absolutely superb in the title role, as he is in all of the films, but he's spectacular in this. Again, he plays wonderfully against Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood, and Salah as well. The bad guys are great, led by Paul Freeman playing Belloc. It all just it's just brilliant. It's great fun. The pacing's fantastic. The score from John Williams, and I've not mentioned John Williams' score in this video yet, but the score is superb. It really is top notch throughout all 5 entries of it, and the works that he contributed to the TV show as well. It's just to die for. But yeah, it all just meshes together. Lucas's story, Spielberg's directing, Ford's acting, and Williams's music, and it's just the perfect sort of combo of just great pulp cinema fun. And for me, there is only one film in this series that pips it to the post. So anybody who knows their Indiana Jones knows what film's left, and if you know me, you certainly knew that this one was going to be the top of the list. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade takes everything that was great about the first 2 movies and just perfects it, in my opinion. As much as I enjoyed the 2 later sequels that we've got in 2008 and in 2023, had the film have ended with Last Crusade, you know, the series I mean, it would have been absolutely just, you know, there'd have been no problem with that whatsoever. It was spectacular from beginning to end, and it's not a perfect film, of course no film is perfect, but it's about as near to perfect for a film can get for me is this film. It is my favourite film of all time. I adore the pairing of Indiana Jones with his dad, played by Sean Connery in this, and Lucas and Spielberg have often said that one of the biggest inspirations for writing the character of Indiana Jones was to write a character that rivaled that of James Bond, and as they said themselves, who better to play it, who better to play Indy's dad than James Bond himself. And it's just inspired casting. It absolutely works. Denholm Elliott, again, is superb in a supporting role, as is John Rhys-Davies as Salah. It's all just fantastic. The villain in Walter Donovan is a little bit reserved and possibly one of the weaker elements of the film in terms of he's not that sort of grandiose compared to maybe some of the other ones, but he does an absolutely fantastic job, does Julian Glover, and his demise at the end, the practical effects on that are brilliant. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, but I will recap, I had the pleasure of meeting Julian Glover about 4 or 5 years ago at a comic and film convention, and I had a really good chat with him about some of the making of this film, and I got to have a picture taken with him, which I'll have likely put on the screen as I'm talking about it, and I got a still from the film signed, which is framed up on the wall just up there. And it was absolutely fascinating and a real honour to get to talk to him. This film's always been special to me, and I've told this story before, but for anybody that might be new, I'll tell it again. My introduction to this film and this series was with my dad one afternoon. My mum and my sister were out. My sister used to dance, and she was taken into a dance lesson. And my dad was really giddy to show me this film that he taped off the TV back in the days when we used to videotape things off the television. And me being a young kid, I wasn't interested if it wasn't Scooby-Doo or Batman, which I mean is largely still true to this day. If it's not Scooby-Doo or Batman, I'm not interested. But yeah, he sort of talked me around. Come on, Jim, you'll love it. It's going to be great. And of course, he saw it when it originally came out. But he put this film on, and within 5 minutes of the opening shots in the flashback sequence with River Phoenix, I was gripped. And I have such vivid memories of that afternoon and watching that film, and then the joy of being shown Raiders of the Lost Ark when that was on the TV later down the line, and then seeing Temple of Doom for the first time when we rented it at my grandmother's house, and just those memories are just such core memories for me, and part and parcel of what sparked all of this behind me, and my love for cinema. And as I'm sure a lot of fathers and sons do that have grown up with these films, the father-son relationship in Last Crusade reminds me of me and my dad, and it's always bittersweet watching this because he's no longer here. There was a time where I thought I might never be able to watch this film again, because when I tried to watch it to try and cheer myself up not long after he passed, I couldn't sit through it. But as time's gone on and those wounds have started to heal, I actually feel like I get my dad back a little bit when I watch these films. And for me, that's why this film is number one of this franchise and is my number one film of all time. So there we are, folks. That's been my subjective ranking of the Indiana Jones film franchise. How would you guys rank it? I suspect very differently to me. Temple of Doom at the bottom of the pile, I imagine, is not the case for most people. But let me know down in the comments how you'd rank them. Be mindful of spoilers, of course, for Dial of Destiny, if you're going to include anything about the plot in that. But do let me know down below. I love to get into chats with you guys about this sort of stuff. It's brilliant to get involved. If you've enjoyed the video, drop it a thumbs up. Lets me and it lets YouTube know to keep making videos like this for you. And if you are new to my channel and this is the first time you see me, hello, please think about subscribing. It helps the channel to grow and I get to know you over further videos as well, which is brilliant. Above all else, folks, go see Dial of Destiny in the cinemas. Take care of yourselves and I look forward to seeing you again really soon for my next video. But bye for now.